He was chirpy. His last words to me were, "I love you," which he always said, and we said back to him. He used to say, "Best mum ever." Yeah, best mum ever, and I've replied, "Best son ever." He had pizza, and he told me about the fire pit, and I said, "Well, there's marshmallows in the cupboard, why don't you toast those?" And him and his friend did. There's a video on our Ring doorbell of him saying to his best friend goodbye at 8:46. He's laughing and says, "See you later," and walks in laughing. And I came home at 10:15. So I walked in and I went straight upstairs, which I always would have done. And I went straight upstairs and I opened the door and went, "What are you doing?" And I honestly thought he was messing around. He was a bit of a prankster, just practical joker, and I thought he was joking. I've never screamed like that in my life. So he's on the 3rd floor, and so I was aware that it's difficult to hear. It's an old house, there's thick walls. And I was aware that it was difficult to hear me. My partner at the time was downstairs, and I just screamed and screamed and screamed. And then I couldn't hear the paramedics. I was on a charger, I'd been out for the day, so I had this tiny little charger against the wall, like trying to plug my phone in to have a battery. And I was just saying, "Get here now, he's not breathing. Get here now, he's not breathing." And apparently it was the fire brigade that got there first. I don't remember who actually came in. There were people everywhere, and I was sort of relieved that it was somebody here. So after Jools died, very shortly afterwards, I'd heard about Archie Battersby. So Archie Battersby had his accident 6 days before Jools died. And people kept saying to me, "Have you heard about this other boy? Do you think it could be the blackout challenge?" And I said, "I can't bring myself to, I couldn't, you're in such a state at that stage." I was crawling up the stairs on my hands and knees. You're barely functioning. Unless somebody put some food in front of me, I wasn't eating, you just not functioning. So I was aware of it, and I even said to the detective at the time, I'd heard about this boy, Archie Battersby, who obviously I now have met Holly, "Do you think it could be that?" And the detective said, "It could be, but we can't prove it." And I remember saying, without going into details about how Jools took his life, I was saying, well, it doesn't make sense. It's not what you would class as a normal suicide, in my opinion. But I've never dealt with this before, so I may be drastically wrong. But my gut feeling from the very early stage was we're missing something. There's a video of us standing upside down, putting a t-shirt on upside down, and we're just laughing. At the very end, Jools goes, "I couldn't stop laughing, Mum." And I just thought that they were silly challenges.
Beanie on it.
Now what? Over your head? How do you
No.
do this?
You put one arm in.
How did you? I can do it. Yeah. I can do this cooking.
Very difficult for parents. I've had some people comment on some of my posts, say, "Well, it's the parents' fault, you should have kept them off social media." And you think, how on earth do you do that? And it's all very well saying take their phone away. Now, forensics did uncover Jools was on TikTok on his computer in his room that he used for schoolwork. Well, he gamed on it as well, but I mean, so I know you take the phones off them, you can get it on a device which, particularly in lockdown, we were working parents, like every other parent, you're going, just try and do some schoolwork and see what you can get done. You can't monitor them 24/7. And this thing that you should monitor your teenage children, it's impossible. I think when a child dies, they need to preserve all data and request it from social media companies as a matter of course. If they don't need it, they don't need it. And that can go to the coroner, because if the parent isn't a perpetrator, as a person of interest, you've then got the right to look at it. But it's not that necessarily I want to see it, I just want it looked at. And if that's a way of solving it, that's fine. But it needs to be compulsory. When a child dies, they request it.
4 days prior to her death, she liked an incoming TikTok video which was sent to her by an algorithm. She actually liked two. And one of those videos was jumping off a cliff. And the second video was making marks on her body. And that's exactly how she died 4 days later. The police and our coroner's court system is a quengo, because in the event of the death of a child, the attending police on the day turn into agents of the court, the coroner's court, the
Yeah.
following day. It's in their best interest to be as fluid and efficient as possible. She was found on her own, in her own bedroom, and she has died by an act she has committed. And there is no sign of a break-in.
Yeah.
Case closed, move on. That's it. That's the police inquiry. Case closed, moved on. I said from Maya's deathbed, with her holding Maya in my hands, and I said to them, I want her data scooped. I want her data scooped. I said it, not as a suggestion, not as a subliminal message. I said it exactly like, I want her data swooped, because nothing about this scenario makes any sense. She had a wonderful life.
Yeah.
She had a wonderful life. She wasn't grungy. She was an A-grade student. She was funny. She wanted to be the house captain of her school. She was confident. She was an articulate young lady blossoming into a woman. How on earth could this have happened? I want her data swooped. And to this day, it hasn't been. It hasn't been. Hasn't been swooped. They have physically gone through her iPad, and that took my perseverance. And I had to give the equipment back, because I challenged them. I said, show me that you've done it. Show me the printout. Show me some evidence that you've actually gone through her stuff. And they couldn't. So they said, oh, let's get the equipment back then. Well, why would you take the equipment back if you looked at it in the first place?
Like myself and the other 3 parents in this lawsuit, how do we get access without having to go to the High Court? Because I was told in the UK the only way of doing it is to go to the High Court to redo his inquest at a cost of £86,000, which I started that process, and then came across the US system, which is, if we can get to discovery stage at the US system, that's when they have to release anything they hold on it. Back last year I had a Zoom meeting with TikTok, and it wasn't until I had been on one of the TV programmes, and while I was on air they said, well, TikTok have said they might have released it. And I went, it's the first I've heard about it. So I went back to the person from TikTok and said, what do you mean you might have deleted it? And he said, well, we don't know what data we've got, and we couldn't. I said, well, can you show me your browsing history on messages? It seems to be maybe browsing history they might have missed off, I don't know. But nobody's actually ever said to us that we do not have this data, but we can give you this under a court order. All I was told is we can't give you anything else without a court order. And so back last year, I made them tell me that they had preserved Jools' accounts. So I said, well, what data have you preserved? They did tell me they've preserved his name and email address, which is really helpful. But I don't know what else they've got. I find it very difficult to believe that a social media company who builds algorithms and things. I was in Parliament before Christmas with Snapchat, Instagram and TikTok. And the general consensus was it was about data protection and that they might get fined by the ICO. The MPs actually said, we'll just take the fine, pay the fine and give the parents the data. And they have absolutely refused, which is just frustrating. As I think as a parent, I'd really appreciate if they said, this is all we have. This is all we have. I hope you get the answers.